Is Barrell Craft Spirits' newest release worth the buy? Let's find out. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So today I am really excited to get to do a pretty early review here of Barrell's upcoming release, their Mizunara Cask Finished Bourbon. So this is part of their Cask Finish series. They did an Amberana finish. They had the Tale of Two Islands, which was a mix of kind of crazy things. Now they're going all in on this Mizunara oak. So we'll go to the bottle stats here in a second, but just an interesting side note is Barrell Vantage, which came out I think in 2022, has a Mizunara component to it. So it'll be interesting to see how this one kind of compares in my mind. But the stats on this particular bottle, Barrell sent this sample over to me actually, so thanks so much to them for being so generous. And they sent with it a little sheet to tell me the details. They'll put all that on the bottle when it comes out because they're super transparent, which is awesome. But components in this particular whiskey. So it's Indiana bourbons. There's a 6, 7, and 9-year-old bourbon blended together from Indiana. Tennessee bourbons, an 18-year and a 14-year-old, and then a Kentucky bourbon at 8 years old. All of that comes together to form a derived mash bill they report of 76% corn, 20% rye, and 7% malted barley. And then I'm not sure how long it's finished in the Mizunara cask, but for some amount of time it's put into this special Japanese oak. So just a little back story on the Mizunara craze. There's been a little bit of an uptick in the market in this particular finish, in this wood. My understanding is it's a pretty rare Japanese wood that the oak it comes from takes like 200 years to be ready to kind of mature. So the tree needs a long time to produce its best kind of oak for barrels. Then the number of barrels is pretty limited. So it's a little bit expensive to produce it this way, but apparently it adds a lot of depth and complexity, which is fascinating. So we'll dive into the whiskey and we'll kind of consider how good it is. Barrell is one of my favorites, so let's hope it's great. Price point wise, they usually come in around $80 to $90 for Barrell products. So a little bit more premium, but again, I've loved a lot of their stuff. Let's see if this holds up. All right. Mizunara cask finish on the nose. Okay. So a similar note to what I got on that Barrell Vantage, but even more turned up here. Peaches. Very strong like peach note and then a creaminess. And then kind of a spicy, peppery oak. So there's definitely an oak presence, but it really turns up that soft peach, which is awesome. Maybe even tending toward like a cherry and banana type fruitiness. Maybe more like strawberry than cherry. Yeah, more of a strawberry peach lightness to it. And then the oak does add some depth. Slight caramel, butterscotch kind of note, but it's mostly that peach, strawberry, and spiciness. Okay, anticipating some good things coming out of this now. Let's taste it after nosing it. Cheers. Wow, that kind of took my palate for a ride, not gonna lie. It started out very creamy vanilla, some of that caramel. The mid palate though, all of that spice comes forward. Really interesting kind of leather, dry spice kicks up in the middle even. That lingers on the finish for sure, but I rarely have a whiskey where I feel like the dry leathery component, excuse me, see it's a little dry. The dry leathery component comes in kind of in the middle, and then the back end, toward the back end of the palate into the finish, that peaches and cream note came forward and added a wallop of sweetness. And then what's lingering the most for me is that spice, that nice oak spice. Okay, now that we've got it on our palate, first sip probably came forward with the spice because it's my first sip of whiskey for the day. So we'll go in for a second sip. Oh, I forgot to mention proof on this guy. It's 116.42 proof. That'll also be why it's tasting a little spicy for the first whiskey of the day. All right, let's go in for the second sip. Cheers. Okay, so on that sip, more of that peach and strawberry really came forward on the front end. So the sweetness came up more on that sip now that it's on my palate, but it still went toward that really nice peppery, oaky spice. It just feels like a dried spice. Like, it's kind of the difference between if you get hot wings, you know, one option is the wet kind of hot sauce wing that's really acidic and in your face. The other side is like the dry rub. This is more like a dry rub with that oakiness, pepperiness. Really nice. And then the back end, it's got more of a sweet oak as well. So it's spicy, but it still has some lingering sweetness. A little bit of that strawberry sticking around too. Okay, let's go in for the third sip. We'll really focus on the finish, but we'll also evaluate the whiskey overall. Cheers. Still smells great. Yeah. All right. So that sip did add a little bit more nuance to it. Less of the peach and strawberry, more of like a apple juice. Maybe it's like white grape juice. So this reminds me a little bit. I have the James E. Pepper barrel proof decanter bottle. I get a lot of white grape kind of notes on that. That one's a lot easier to sip on and smoother. This one is much more aggressive and spicy. I will say the only potential negative, and it's not really a negative, it's more of just a personal preference thing, is this one packs a lot of spice and it feels dry and leathery on the back end. So if that's not your thing, if you're looking for a little bit more of an easy sipping whiskey, this isn't necessarily it. This is more aggressive, in your face, spicy, tingly all over the mouth, good amount of like warm Kentucky hug going down, and it just lets you know that it's got some oak and leather components. But overall, if you like that thing, and if you're really looking for something that's got these interesting like peach strawberry notes, they kind of killed it with this. Reminds me of the Barrell Vantage. I'll have to probably compare the two and just take some notes on what the differences are, but all on its own, this Mizunara cask finish from Barrell, given that it's got a good amount of like aged components in it and just the base whiskey, and then they add in that extra finish, it's very, very solid. I don't know if it's my favorite thing I've ever had from Barrell, but it's very distinct and interesting, and I think going really hard in that one direction with the single Mizunara finish gives it an extra kind of character that's discernible from that finish. So really good. Like most Barrell products, I would say it's worth exploring. If you're a fan of Barrell, I think it's a no-brainer. If you're looking for anything along the lines of what I described, or that sounds interesting to you, I do think Barrell consistently puts products out there that are worth that $80 to $90 price point. Thanks again to Barrell for sending this sample ahead of time so I can review it. Hopefully this whiskey starts hitting shelves near you and that you start seeing it, and you can grab it if you're a fan of the brand. I think that's gonna do it, everybody. While I still have you, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that's what helps get the video out to the most people. And then comment down below, let me know, what do you think of Barrell as a brand? Are you gonna be looking for this particular finish? What do you think of Mizunara finishes as a whole? And then also, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Hope you're enjoying all the great content that I'm trying to put out here in 2024. Plan to continue that. We just passed 2,500 subscribers, and that just blows my mind still. So next big goal is 5,000. I have started to plan out a little bit of a giveaway option there, and that's still a far way off, but I kind of want to ramp up and see if we can get there. So would love to have you aboard if you haven't joined already. All right, until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.